A hero is someone who has given his or her life to something bigger than oneself. Joseph Campbell. My guest in this episode of Passing the Torch is the Chief Strategy Officer at Veteran Tickets Foundation, aka Vet Tix. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Marine veteran and a man who was inducted into the Arizona Hall of Fame. Passing the Torch with Stephen Weintraub starts now. First and foremost, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thanks for the kind introduction, and thank you for having me. So I'm very honored and appreciative that you reached out to me and asked me if I would be on your podcast. So I'm really excited to be a part of it because I'm in some great company. Some of your previous, well, a lot of your previous guests are quite. You're quite accomplished. So to be in that company, I'm honored. So thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'm grateful that you gave me and everyone else passes for the Falcons Buccaneers game Thursday Night Football a couple of years ago in Atlanta. That ended up being a highlight reel game where both Kirk Cousins and Baker Mayfield threw for 400 or 500 yards, and it was just a total shootout. But
yeah, well, we requested that. We were like, hey, we got some vet tixers with field tickets, so we want to make sure that it's a good game. So, hey, Baker, if you can do this and do that. So, and both of those guys, Baker and Kurt, Cousins are solid guys. So they went with the script. So we were appreciative.
Yeah. You're like, hey, can you throw 4 touchdowns tonight? Like, yeah. Not only are you my fantasy team, but I just, I'm trying to impress all these other veterans here. Yeah. Hey, one question I like to start off each podcast with is, why is life great right now?
Why is life great? It's because everybody has their struggles, and if you can sift through the positive and find the positives, and I have a lot to be grateful for, and it hasn't always been that way, and we've all gone through adversity. Yeah. And so for me, I really focus on where I am and where I've come from. So for me, life is great because of that.
Congratulations, by the way. I saw that you recently celebrated 10 years with Vet Tix. Is that right?
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, it was. It's 10 years like this month, like this week. So, yeah, it's been a decade. It's just like everything else; it goes fast. But yeah. I remember first starting, and we were still kind of a startup back then, even though it had been around for 8 years, and it was a grind, and it's been great ever since. It's so much fun.
Do you remember your first day?
I do. Yeah. And it was funny because, it was like my first day, or before the first day, I got this like slew of Vet Tix t-shirts that, my boss, our founder, gave me, and, he's like, hey, here's your gear and everything. I was like, okay, cool. And like, I think like the first day I showed up in slacks and a collared shirt or something like that, and he looked at me like I had something growing out of my forehead. And he's like, no, he's like, and him, and we had a small staff back then. Everybody else, because it was in May, so it was warm weather here in Arizona, and so everybody else in the office is in shorts and t-shirts. Yeah, so he looks at me and goes, don't, like, in essence, don't ever wear that again into the office. And I wear that kind of stuff when I'm, out and about, maybe at the Military Influencer Conference or something, things like that. But daily uniform is shorts and t-shirts or whatever. So I do remember my first day, and like, I was like, wow, this is so cool. So yeah, 10 years ago.
What were some of your favorite memories about those, we'll say that first year working at Vet Tix, because everything is so new and so fresh to you at that time?
Yeah. Well, what was so cool was that, and I worked for a nonprofit. I came from a different nonprofit, and nonprofits, the way they operate and things can be very different because they're not the structured corporate thing. But it was like so cool how things were just so chill and so flow. And I got my boss again. He was like, when he interviewed me, I asked him, like, what's all right, chief strategy officers or a job rec? And he's like, no, it's like, you figure it out. So I had a lot of freedom and latitude to create the position and build it. And so that was 10 years ago. Okay, so we didn't have AI, right? Yeah,
No,
so
exactly.
it wasn't doing a search on, what is a chief strategy officer? I mean, we had Google, right? So you could do
Yeah.
that, but it it wasn't tailored towards what we do in our mission. So for me, it was figuring out what I was obviously familiar with the organization, but it's like, where do we want to go? What direction and growth, and how do we get there, and things like that. So for me, it was absorbing the culture and really figuring out what and how we where we wanted to get and how we were going to get there. And what's really cool, so going back to your question, is shortly after I came on board in May of 16, maybe about 4 or 5 months later, we had a big milestone. And it was very big to us because we had eclipsed distributing our 3 millionth ticket, which was huge for us. And so it was like, wow, 3 million tickets, that's tremendous. So we were really excited about that. And it was a big deal. And fast forward, now we're at, I checked the numbers this morning, we're at over 37.5 million we've distributed. So we've come a long way since then. But we were still, again, 8 years as an organization, but in some ways we were still a startup because we were so small and so unknown in the
Yeah.
military and veteran space. And that was my job, was to go knock down those doors and introduce us.
You've done a fantastic job, and I've been someone that has benefited from Vet Tix, and I brag. And I do remember like 2016, 2017, first hearing. That's when I first actually heard about it. Um, do you who was like the first athlete that you met with your role
It's
with Vet
funny.
Tix?
It's we really got into the sports piece of that later on. I mean, because a lot of the events, believe it or not, were more concerts. I mean, we had like the Arizona Diamondbacks, which is in our backyard because we're
Yeah.
based in Phoenix, was our first donor, and they've been tremendous donors since. And so what they would do is, uh, during the season, like once a season or something, invite our leadership onto the field during the pregame, and
Yeah.
I say recognize us and things like that. And so it was like teams, but some of the athletes were, that came after a while. And one of them was really Kurt Warner. He's been a tremendous just
Who is he again?
supporter
Who
of
is
our
he?
organization. Obviously, he's been on your show,
Yeah.
and just such a giver and so humble. Him and his wife Brenda are just such great people, and they live in our community here in Arizona. And sometimes I see him out and about, and I'll say hi to him, and he's just such a solid, down to earth guy. And I'm like, thank you so much for what you do for us and everything. And he's just like, yeah, no, he doesn't poo poo it, but he's like, it's the least I could do.
Yeah. When I like to remind everybody of this, and since you brought him up, and I did tell him this during when he was on my show last year, that he's my second favorite and what I consider the second best quarterback of all time. And of course, he was like, "Well, he's competitive." He was like, "Well, who's first?" And he's thinking it's going to be Brady or Montana, Elway, or whoever. I'm like, "It's Uncle Rico, man. It's not even close." Like Kurt Warner, like Kurt Warner doesn't have the arm strength of Uncle Rico. But anyway,
Yeah, right.
little
Yeah,
Napoleon
yeah.
Dynamite shout out.
Yep. Good company. Yep.
Yeah. I want to take a detour, just more personal, fun story about you. Then we'll come back to Vet Tix. But before we go deeper, please discuss the story about Rob Riggle attending your retirement party.
Oh, that was a complete tongue in cheek. But there's a backstory there.
Okay.
And Rob Riggle and I were classmates in the Marine Corps, and we were going through this, what it's called, command and staff course, and we were both reserve officers at the time. And we were going through the reserve command and staff. So it was one weekend a month, and it was at Miramar, Marine Corps Air Station Miramar. And it was, you're not in uniform. It's because they want it to be like, very casual, and because there was, officers from different ranks, so they don't want the rank to
Oh
be,
yeah.
kind of you can't speak freely, to this higher ranking officer, whatever. So day one of the class, the instructor's like, hey, everybody go around. We're going to go around the class and state your name, your rank, your military occupational specialty, and what you do in the civilian world. So we're going around, and this was before he was popular, before he was like really famous.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, my name's Rob Riggle. I'm, Major Rob Riggle, public affairs officer in the Marine Corps, and a civilian side. I'm a comedian. Just like that. And there's a pregnant pause, and everybody just starts busting up laughing. And Rob's direct delivery, right? And he wasn't trying to be funny. It was just, and everybody just laughed for the most part. And he's like, no, seriously, I do stand up, and I write. I'm a comedy writer. I write for The Daily Show and this, that, and the other thing. And so he was writing for The Daily Show at the time. And so we were classmates for like, I think a year or two in this command and staff course. And I've seen, like, we see each other from time to time passing. So he wasn't at my retirement party, but and that was a parody on that, on that commercial. But he's he's a solid guy.
That's awesome. No, he's so, I love his work and what he does. He's hilarious, and extra bonus since he's a veteran. One other celebrity encounter I did want to ask you about: what was your experience like being on MasterChef and meeting Chef Gordon Ramsay?
That was Gordon Ramsay's such a cool guy, and he, in some ways, different from the on-screen persona. And again, genuinely nice guy. And what happened there was, I was on active duty in the Marine Corps, and this was like 20, maybe 12-ish. And I was stationed at Camp Pendleton, and I was colonel at the time. And this email went out to the distro list just for like Marine colonels throughout the base. And it said, hey, MasterChef is going to film an episode on Camp Pendleton. If you're interested in being a judge on the show, put your name in. And so I'm like, yeah, okay, right, And so I put in, and a couple days later, nobody must have put in for it because they picked me. I don't know how they picked me or why. And probably because I was the only one. So they filmed, given the backstory and everything, I show up in the area at Camp Pendleton. It's an open field. It's like a helicopter landing zone. And I show up there, and there's the Marine Public Affairs officer there. It wasn't Rob, but somebody else, and introduces me to the producer. And she's like, okay, I'm going to introduce you to Gordon, in his trailer, and the other two chefs, whatever. And I was like, and I'm in uniform, in my camis. And I said to the producer, she's this nice little British lady. I said, okay, I'm going to meet Gordon, but I've got one condition throughout this whole day. I said, I can't have him yell at me. I just can't handle people yelling at me. And she just like laughed, it was like, oh, you're so funny. So went and met him. Super nice guy, so supportive of the troops. And but before then, and since fast forward, he was telling me then that his son was going to join the Royal Marines, which he did. And since then, his son joined the Marines, and I think he's out now. And so super supportive and patriotic of, the U.S. troops and things like that. And he was just such a super nice guy.
No, that's really cool. I'm a big fan of his, and I love all the cooking shows. And he would go from calling someone a hippo, and then, or something crazy, like and then he'll be like so kind to them 2 minutes later, like, hey, you're doing great.
Yeah, he can click it off safe pretty quickly. And No, just super, super nice guy, really personable. So
That's awesome.
that was a fun experience. And the thing is that when I told my wife about it, she lost her mind because I'm the world's worst cook. I am terrible. I don't even try, but I have a lot of admiration for people that are good cooks because it takes a lot. And so she was like, I can't believe you're going to be on Master Chef. You don't even know how to cook. Da da da. And I was like, yeah. So
Yeah, no, that's great. I want to just take it back to you. How did someone who wanted to be a fighter pilot end up with Vet Tix?
yeah, look, ever since I was a little kid, that's what I wanted to do, and to be a fighter pilot. And my dad served in the Marines. He wasn't a career guy, but he did. He was a grunt. He did 3 years enlisted, got out, stayed in the reserves for a couple of years, went back to college, and had a professional career. And but he would tell me stories about the military, and I was so fascinated by it.
Yeah.
And he never said like you're going to join the Marines. He never like he said if you want to be a sanitation worker, do that, just be the best at it. So he never said you need to do this or do that. And so I want to be a fighter pilot. And in high school, career night, whatever, I was talking to the Air Force guys because that's what you do, right? If you want to,
Yep.
fly pointy nose planes, that's where you go. And they're like, oh well, how good are your grades? Are you taking calculus, this, that, and the other thing? And I'm like, no, like what's calculus? But I'm not the greatest student or whatever. So I was like, okay, my dreams are crushed. But then there's like the Navy and the Marine Corps guys, and they're like, oh, you want to fly with us? All you need is a degree, just college degree, get through flight school, and boom. And I was like, wait a minute. So if the Navy and Marine Corps pipelines are the same, I'll go Marines. So I went down to flight school, but before I went to flight school, there was a backlog to go to flight school after you got commissioned, and I was able to go to a F-18 Hornet squadron and do some on-the-job training. And by design, they do that so you can learn the ins and outs of a squadron and things like that. And so got to see behind the scenes and this and that. And then I got down to flight school, and I was like, I don't think this is really what I want to do. Like peeking behind the curtains, I was like, I think I want to lead Marines on the ground more than I want to fly planes. And nothing wrong with that. I mean, a lot of my buddies are aviators and good on them. But for me to drop out of flight school, that was like a super tough decision for me, probably the toughest decision in my life. People, my peers, when I was down there, they're like, wait, you're going to drop out. They were freaking out. Some of them were like, I can't believe you don't want to do this. And but other people were like, wow, I can't believe you have the guts to do that. Because if I did that, my dad would kill me. And I was like, wow. So that was a watershed moment for me. And I never had any regrets going forward. And again, like for those aviators, those pilots, whatever, hey, great. And it's a necessary job, but you got to follow your dreams.
Absolutely. So I gotta sneeze. What? Oh man, my allergies been going crazy. So I just.
I thought it was my cologne.
I love that you said chasing your dreams because that's basically what I'm doing with this. It's not basic. I'm more intentional. It is what I'm doing with my podcast. So I've started podcasting in 2014, and then this podcast specifically started in January of 2018. I retired from active duty on November 1st, so a little over 6 months ago, after 23 years.
And when you reached out to me, like, and not to jump in, but you were like, and I kind of forgot we met at Mick, and you're like, oh, I retired after 23. I thought you were going to be some old crusty dude, and it's like, I was like, oh man, like, yeah.
I'm 44. So, I'm 44.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you wear it well.
Stop. I mean, keep going, Steve. I mean, like, like that could be another event that Vet Tix could sponsor, where it's a ticketed event where everyone's just giving me compliments about how I look, except Gordon Ramsay will come in and start yelling at me to bring me back down to reality. No, I appreciate that, but it's just reading about Vet Tix, reading stuff about you. It just validates, it just cements the passion on what I want to do, because I feel like this is where I'm best. This is where my heart lies, and um, yeah, where I thrive.
Yeah, look, and what you do, the ideology behind your podcast is so like great and important because there's some podcasters, and again, not judging anybody, but they want to tell like war stories and
Yeah,
things like that, and again, there's nothing wrong with that, but if that's not your cup of tea, then and again, who your guests are, and you have that military veteran piece of it and how some of that ties in. So, I mean, again, you followed your, I don't know, passion, or it's like, hey, this is something I'm interested in. And to your credit, again, your list of attendees, I mean, aside from those that we mentioned, I mean, senior leaders
yeah.
in the military is like, that's big leagues.
I appreciate that. My very first guest was General John Jumper. He was the 17th Air Force Chief of Staff, and he was actually he was the 4-star when I joined in 2002. But then I also had Lee Ellis on. He's a retired Air Force colonel, '06. He was a Vietnam POW for 5 years, and he wrote the book Leading with Honor. And I got to do an in person. He's one of the big reasons why I started this podcast, and I got to do an in person interview with him 5 years after I started my podcast, and it was on 9/11 in Washington D.C. And I think about just how all that comes together. That wouldn't have happened without my podcast,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. Well,
And
and
then
there's
even
the saying, never meet your heroes.
yeah,
But in this case, it was the positive.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, that's yeah, I love that. Did you almost join the Coast Guard? Did I read that somewhere? Is that right?
I jokingly say I should have joined the Coast
Okay.
Guard, and because all right. So again, military anecdote. I'm an '06. I'm stationed. I was mobilized reservist. This is like probably 2012, 2013. I'm stationed at Camp Pendleton. I'm doing, my job was kind of, on the senior level, whatever. And we were doing some stuff with the Navy, like with the Third Fleet. So I'm
Yeah,
down at Coronado at the sub base in Coronado. And it was a planning conference with Third Fleet, and the Marines were down there and this and that. And so we're on the Coronado side of the bay, and it's gorgeous over there. And there's this big, so we're in this meeting room, and there's a big bay window that looks out across San Diego Bay to downtown. And it's a beautiful Chamber of Commerce day.
yeah,
And I'm looking out there, and there's a Coast Guard little patrol boat. It's like got 4 huge outboard engines on the back. It's like 32 footer or whatever. And there's there's a mounted machine gun on the bow, one on the stern, and there's 2 coasties just cruising the bay. And that's when I had the epiphany. I'm like, man, I joined the wrong service.
that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I had that like just kind of like as a mental note question mark in my head. I was like, did I read that right about Coast Guard? But
But
anyway,
look, in all seriousness, the Coast Guard is the most overlooked and of the branches, right? And
yeah,
there's the whole, are they military or Department of Transportation or whatever? We can debate that, whatever, but their role is so vital and again, so often unknown and overlooked. And again,
agreed.
as a senior officer through my, professional military education, I learned more about the Coast Guard's role in national military security and strategy. So it is such a vital role that does get overlooked.
No, agreed. Yeah, and I feel like to your point, yes, it has been overlooked. I think probably in the past year they're starting to get more uh, people realize the significance and the importance of the Coast Guard, and yeah, so shout out to all the coasties out there.
And look, I mean, this isn't a recruitment, commercial here, but look at the places they get stationed, right? It's everywhere on the coast. Right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's there's not too many bad Coast Guard, stations.
yeah,
So.
no, yeah, yeah, exactly. I want to transition to Vet Tix, so yeah, please discuss Vet Tix.
Yeah, and look, Vet Tix, for those of you that aren't familiar, our mission is one mission and one mission only: give something to those who gave. And how we do that is we distribute free event tickets to veteran service members and first responders and their families as a way to thank them for their service and sacrifice. Because when you're in uniform, you're serving, and you miss family events, you miss weddings, anniversaries, recitals, whatever, and because you're on duty. Same thing for first responders when you're on duty, you're on watch. So if we can send you to these events when you're off duty or as a veteran with your family and friends to make up for that lost time, to rebuild those relationships with your kids, with your wife, with your friends, for an afternoon and evening at a football game or a concert or a festival or whatever, and just de-stress, unplug, and check out. That's our mission. That's what we do, and that's how we give back. And you and I, having been on the other side of that, being deployed, whatever, we know what that's like. So when we go to these events and we experience that, and so a lot of people are like, well, I don't need Vet Tix because they're free tickets and I can afford tickets, and I don't want to take these tickets away from somebody more deserving. Well, our donors, our teams, leagues, performers, promoters, venues, private donors, season ticket holders that aren't going to use their tickets. So those are our donors. And we talk about in our society, thank you for your service, right? So what does that mean? It's a very broad and vague term, and you can't really put your finger on what that is. But in our society, we talk about thank you for your service. Well, our donors, they want to thank our veteran service members and first responders for their service. And how do they do that? They host them at their events through Vet Tix. It's like, look, yeah, you can afford these tickets, but this is how we can thank you and your family, is by us, you being our guest through Vet Tix at these events. So that's our mission. That's all we do. And it was the brainchild of my boss, our founder and Navy veteran, Mike Focaretto. It was his brainchild here in Arizona. He had this concept and started thinking more about it. It's because it was like, hey, he was at the Super Bowl in Glendale in 2003, and him and his buddy, who's a vet, they're sitting there. Color guard marches on, they march off, and there's empty seats. The color guard was in the mezzanine, standing room only, and there's empty seats. And he was working on this project already, and he was like, wait a minute, if there's empty seats at the Super Bowl, I've got to scale up my project bigger. And that was his brainchild. And fast forward 10 years, over 2.6 million members and growing, and over 37.5 million tickets distributed. We distribute on average about over 23,000 tickets a day. And that's where, for us, every day is Veterans Day. Sounds corny, but it's not just November, right? It's not just the month of November. Every day we're distributing over 23,000 tickets, sending people to events throughout the year. So it's simple, but we're also the largest veteran service organization that nobody's heard of, because people are like, wait, Vet Tix, what's that? And our sister organization, because I talked about first responders, is First Tix, 1STTIX, and that's the same exact thing for police, fire, and EMS. So both organizations, it's identical. You sign up, you create an account, it's free. We verify your status, and then you start receiving notifications about events in your local area.
It's great. Like I said, I live in Dayton, Ohio, so Columbus is an hour away, Cincinnati's an hour away, Cleveland's roughly 3 hours, Indianapolis is actually only 2 hours from me. So for me specifically, there's tons of opportunities.
The Blue Jackets.
The Blue Jacket. I mean, there's so much going on here, and it's fantastic. Vet Tix is it's clearly more than about tickets. It's about belonging, reconnections, to your earlier point, and even sometimes saving lives. When you hear stories like the veteran, I saw something about a veteran sharing who said the NASCAR event changed the trajectory of his life. How has that changed the way you personally define impact?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. And that's where, our mission, I explained it, but at the event, you can take a photo of yourself, upload it into our app, and thank our donor. Hey, thanks Ohio State Buckeyes for these football tickets. My buddies and we had a great time at the game. So we share these thank yous with the donors. And that way our donors can see the impact of their generosity, but they can see the gratitude that you, Martin, have for attending these events. And it's not required. You don't have to do that, but you get incentivized for doing it. And so we have over 2.5 million of these thank yous that I don't read them all, but they get approved. We have a staff that approves them. Yeah. And some of these that we see are, hey, thanks, my wife and I had a great time, or my bros and I had a blast, thanks, whatever. But a lot of them are what you mentioned. Hey, I brought my buddy to this event. He wasn't firing off all cylinders. I thought he could use, some time off, whatever. And the example you brought up was, this guy, he's a veteran. He was like you, young, retired, and he brought his buddy, who was a fellow vet, to a NASCAR race in Martinsville, Virginia, and his buddy wasn't firing off all cylinders. They go to the race, they're sitting with other veterans because they're sitting in a Vet Tix section, and the guy on the ride home says, hey, thanks for inviting me to the race today, because my plan for today was I was going to kill myself, and because the guy was going through a divorce, child custody, and things like that. But he was like, hey, sitting with other vets, this whole thing, it's kind of changed my whole perspective on life. And, I want to live, things like, so we get a lot of those types of testimonials. Thank you. So not only is it giving back, but it's the wellness piece of what we do. And a lot of times, because these tickets, they get donated, they're in the same sections, rows, blocks. So whether you realize it or not, quite often you're sitting among your tribe. It's like, hey, that dude looks like me, kind of talks like me, whatever. Well, yeah, you're sitting in the Vet Tix section. So it gives you that sense of camaraderie. Now you're sitting with other, you may not be rooting for the same team, but, you wore the same, uniform or patch, or, flag patch, whatever. So it gives you that camaraderie that a lot of our brothers and sisters are missing. They lose their sense of purpose when they get out, and they're looking for something. So by attending these events, and we see it, it's like, hey, I sat next to this bunch of people that, now we're hanging out, we're going to other Vet Tix events, or we're doing these things. And again, it's an unintended consequence of our mission, but it's something that happens.
Now, I love that. Thanks for sharing that story, because that really caught my eye. And I read the study that you had sent me, that the Vet Tix study. And something else I took a note of was, with 90% reporting positive impact, but a clear gap in deeper relationships. What's the next evolution of Vet Tix, moving from access to events to actually engaging conversations?
Yeah, look, and again, we're the fun charity. Like, there's a lot of veteran service organizations out there that are doing great things in the space, right? Because they're addressing the challenges of homelessness and suicide and employment and things like that. And that's great. And we don't get in the rice bowl on that. And we'll never scope creep into those things, because there's great organizations that are doing that. And for us, this is all we do. We focus on tickets, and that's all we'll ever focus on. But what you're talking about is the thought leadership piece of our mission. And even though, we're the fun charity, the wellness of attending live events, being out in that space, and in our world, right, especially in the military and veteran first responder space, sometimes it's being comfortable with uncomfortable. And we lived that in the military. We were conditioned, because there was times where we didn't know what was going to happen. We're on an exercise or a mission. During the kinetic eras of our service, you just never knew what was going to happen, but you were comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? We never gotten curled up in the fetal position and started sucking our thumb and saying, you know, give me a hug, right? We
Yeah.
didn't do that. We persevered. And so when we're out of uniform, it shouldn't be any different. So being comfortable with uncomfortable. So if you're struggling with the isolation or the depression or, making new friends or whatever, this is old hat to us. This is muscle memory. So from a thought leadership perspective, it's like you attend these events, talk to the person next to you. If you're there at a Vet Tix event, more than likely they served, or they're the spouse of somebody that served, or they're first responder, and you're in that club, and it's just so for us. I mean, we're not gonna change what we do, but for me personally, as the chief strategy officer of the organization, I want to be at the table for these thought leadership discussions, because what we do is so vital, and there's so many
Yeah.
organizations that are chasing what is it, what's that thing that is going to flip the switch, to make these people in a better head state, right, and headspace. And that's, we're not the panacea, but we're an arrow in the quiver.
And these are some great, like, clippable moments. I love that. This is gonna be, you have some great thoughts. Like, this is good stuff.
Yeah, and the other side of it is creating memories. Okay,
Yeah.
we're in a society that, especially the younger generation, they're not so much materialistic. It's about experiences, and whether you're blasting out on TikTok or IG or whatever, but it's the experience. It's being at that event, and that again, that's what we do. And that's where those memories, creating those memories, they're up in here, and maybe they're in your mobile device, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's the experience of and again, we get these testimonials. I never would have been able to afford to go see, pick a show, or a football game, a Colts
Yeah.
game, or whatever. So we're creating these memories that last a lifetime, that enrich the soul.
Obviously, for me, I'm still very young into my retirement, but just I been around a ton of people who have retired or separated. And, one of the top 3 reasons I say that people what they commonly say they miss the most is just a connection, like, just a right? Just being around there's just the random BS sessions, or just joking around, or going out to grab food with a group of coworkers and stuff and your friends, that it's not, the holidays, like, yeah, I missed Christmas and Thanksgiving 2 or 3, me personally, 2 or 3 years in a row, and it's sad. But then I think about, man, I was able to eat that dinner with some pretty fun people too,
Yeah, yeah,
right? When
yeah.
I was so, um,
Yeah, and you're spot on, because when we were deployed over the holidays, we weren't with our blood family or whatever, but
yeah,
we were with a different family, and I remember those also, and I remember those
yeah.
those guys and ladies I was with, and you're never gonna forget those. So you created memories, and yeah, to your point, now that you're out, find your tribe, right,
Yeah.
and do that.
No, it's great. Um, with regard to tickets, not just for a sporting event, it could be for a concert or anything. Has there been one kind of, we'll say, a giant well that you've been trying to get for Vet Tix, like a certain show or venue? You're like, man, this is the one thing I've been trying to get for the past 5 years or so.
Yeah, that's a great question. And when we were a lot smaller, for us, the brass ring was the Super Bowl tickets. And I remember when we got our first pair, and they were donated by a private donor who couldn't go, and he found out about our organization. He wasn't a veteran, but he's like, this organization looks pretty cool. Donated them. It was in Atlanta. It was the Super Bowl, forever ago, but back in Atlanta, and the person that won was like, actually, I think we had two pairs that were donated. We wound up getting two pairs. So the
Wow.
Super Bowl was like, and now we have such a great relationship with the NFL and a lot of the teams, to include the Colts, that we're able to get NFL Super Bowl tickets. I mean, and back again when we were smaller, like Hamilton was the hot ticket. And we were able to get Hamilton tickets. And look, we will never procure tickets on the secondary market. Our tickets are through donors. Our fourth largest donor is Vet Tix. And that's where the money we bring in, over 99% of the money we bring in goes to buying more tickets to create more supply to meet demand. So we were able to actually buy tickets, Hamilton tickets, through somebody in the production of Hamilton. So, and now, I mean, Hamilton is Hamilton. So that was big.
Yeah.
But the only thing really that we haven't been able to get tickets for is the Masters. And understandably. And so, yeah, whatever, like it would be nice, but again, that's not the hill we're going to die on.
Yeah.
But you would be surprised, because some people were like, they would write in and they'd be like, hey, I'm trying to get, do you have tickets? Like do you think you're going to get tickets for like the SpaceX flights, things like that. So some of the requests we get are pretty out there. So yeah.
I might start writing I might create fake email accounts and just email you random requests like, can you give me a ticket
we
to
get a kick out of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, when we get those, we share it with the staff, and we jokingly, it's like, hey, so-and-so, get on that, see what you can do.
This person wants to go to the Wonka chocolate factory. Like, yeah.
Hey, sign me up for that one, man.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pull an Augustus Gloop. I'm going right to the river. Yeah.
That's good. I love that. Just wrapping up with some final questions. If there was a giant billboard with your picture on it for the world to see, what would you want your leadership message to say, and where would you want that billboard to be located?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I mean, look, I'm a humble guy. I mean, I'm pretty, I'm the kind of the face of the organization, and by
And you
design.
look very young. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 60.
You don't look 60. You look great.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm old.
I was
I'm
doing
old
the math.
AF.
Because no, you're not. Like, you look young. So when I saw like when you joined, so I was kind of doing the math, and I had a guess, but I was like, man, you don't look anything close to it. So good for you.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. Yeah, and I test that to good genes. Thanks, mom and dad, and all that stuff. So okay, billboard with my AI generated face. Yeah, but I think the message would be like, it would be something about resiliency, right? Like, it's in you, that there's great things that are in you that you have to find, and you can't chat GPT that. It's going back in there, and like, what did you do? Like, what when you were a kid, like what got you excited? Or and again, the military beats us down mentally, physically, emotionally, psychologically, right? But we gotta be like, like snakes, and shed that skin, and again, find what it is that, and sometimes it might be something that you never did, right? So it's finding something new. So, my message would be find what makes you happy, that find your happiness. And so that would be my message. There was times where I wasn't firing on all cylinders, and I was in dark places, and I didn't like being in there, and I got help, and nobody threw me the ring buoy. I had to go find it, and I did, and it wasn't hard to find. Help is not hard to find. So you have to have the will, and again, us that served in uniform, again, we're studs, right? Like, when I tell people, it's like, hey, when you're in uniform and somebody knocked you down, what did you do?
Got back
you picked
up.
yourself up,
Yeah.
you dusted yourself off, and you continued to march. So now that you're not in uniform, you get knocked down emotionally or whatever, reach back in there, pick yourself up and carry on and find what it is that gets you at increases your airspeed and altitude. So that's kind of my message.
No, that's great. That's a good message. I needed to hear that, so that's really good.
Well, I mean, I moonlight as a life coach, so no, I'm kidding. No.
For the billboard picture, we'll just put Ryan Gosling's picture up there. We'll say Steve
Dude.
Weintraub. Yeah. And
Yeah.
then, yeah.
Oh man. And that
Yeah.
you had me at Ryan Gosling. Okay.
So a couple episodes ago, I had Andy Reese on. He's an Army veteran, but he's also a mental performance coach for the Chicago Bears. And you should check out that episode because I think some of the stuff that we talked about mental fitness, right? And like he got hired specifically this past season by the new head coach Ben Johnson and to work with Caleb Williams. And Caleb Williams had a great turnaround, a great second year. But aside from that, there's a lot of Uncle Rico jokes in that.
So look, and Uncle Rico, clearly one of the most overlooked athletes in sports history. And I think someone equally as overlooked is Rod Tidwell. I mean,
show me the money, right? Yeah.
Show me the money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jerry, show me the money. You're my Quan. Yeah. I'm a Sun Devil. Jerry, I'm a Sun. I need money. Yeah. So yeah, Rod Tidwell, same thing.
Nice Rod Tidwell. No one ever talks about him. So
no, because he was so disrespected until Jerry Maguire. Troy Aikman wanted that kind of relationship with his agent. Just never happened.
Man, that's great. That's great. So since episode 100, I started a podcast tradition where I want to pass the torch between episode and guest. So what's a question I can ask, or what's a question or a quote I can use in a future episode with a future guest?
I think, a question would be at the lowest point of your life, what was it that got you out of that? What was your torch that led you out of that, the turbulence? And again, I think when people can share those anecdotes, because again, like your guests are freaking A team, like Mr. T level.
I appreciate that.
People, right?
But that includes you. That includes you.
Oh, thank you. But we've all been there in some way, shape, or form, and finding out what their challenges were and how they got out of it is what led them out of it. And again, sometimes it's friendship, sometimes whatever. But I think that that kind of question is thought provoking and would I think your audience would appreciate.
I appreciate. Yeah, thank you for those kind words. Before we close out, is there anything you want to share about Vet Tix, or if people, how do you want them? Where's the best place for people to find Vet Tix, and how can people best support Vet Tix?
If you're not a member already, go VetTix, VETTIX.org. If you're a first responder, one, First Tix, 1STTIX.org, and check it out. And because again, it's like some people I know are like my colleagues in the veteran space. No, I don't need it. Like I haven't signed up. And then they sign up and they're like, oh shit, man. Like I went to XYZ event, or my wife took her girlfriends to. So whether you can afford it or not, it's because you never know what kind of events. There's some really cool stuff that we get other than the obvious stuff. But like for me personally, I went and I went as a Vet Tixer because I put in for the lottery just like a normal person, and I saw the Red Hot Chili Peppers and some like really cool shows. And it's funny because like when I go to these events, my wife and I, we're in the Vet Tix section and we're sitting there going, okay, which one's the veteran? Like we're hiding in plain sight. and I don't
Drinking
tell
energy
anybody,
drinks.
obviously. Yeah. And we're like, okay, which one served, whatever. So like, check it out. Like, just do it.
Nah, that's great. It is. There's so many, and like I check out their website often, and there's so many there's so many different things, great, cool things going on. Not just sports is a big focus, but there's so many different. There's plays, and I mean, it's countless things. Steve, last question: what can I do for you? How can I best serve you?
Look, I mean, this in itself was tremendous. So, I mean, just, you know, and that is, tell your friends, hey, do you know about Vet Tix? And not like you got to do that to everybody, but I mean, kind of the de facto evangelism piece of that. And that's how people sign up. Like when people sign up, it says, how did you hear about us? And a lot of times it's through a friend, through a referral, things like that. So what you can do is just kind of, help us, send the message. And again, it's the wellness piece of it. It's how we give back. It's paying it forward. And that's why I'm so passionate about our organization, because both of us were on the other side of it.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you for having me on and for reaching out. I'm glad we connected at Mick. I'll be at Mick this year. Hopefully are you going to be there? That's the question.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So we will be able to face there.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. So thank you so much for having me on and for reaching out. This was awesome. I love it.
Steve, yeah, thank you so much for those kind words. And I look forward to just talking again in person later this year in Tampa. And honored that you were gracious enough to be a guest on my podcast. I'm trying to grow this thing, and certainly honored to have you and Vet Tix on the show. So I appreciate you.
Keep up the great work.
Thanks.